The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hi there.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello, Dom.
So we are back from our last time where we had our epic iPhone versus Android rock'em, sock'em, knock 'em down, drag-out fight, battle of supremacy. Actually, it was actually pretty even-handed, and I thought it was a good discussion. And if you hadn't had a chance to listen to that, folks, go back to Tech 020. That was the show number 20, and go to sqpn.com/technology and check it out. I think it was a pretty good balance back and forth about iPhone and Android and the strengths and weaknesses of both. And I like to pat myself on the back because I think I was pretty even-handed for being a Mac guy, a lifelong Mac guy. I thought I gave Android its props and noticed iPhone's deficiencies. So
I will say that I learned a bit about Androids that I didn't know before after listening to it. So I'm with you, Dom, that I'm a iOS user, but
yes, I find it very useful. And I listen to or watch a couple of Android YouTube channels, mainly Android focused YouTube channels and podcasts, just so I'm aware of what's going on and what's out there, and frankly where the other guys are doing a better job than Apple is and that sort of thing. One I recommend is Mr. Mobile, which is a YouTube channel, which is produced right here in the Boston area. And one of the things that got me into it was he filmed in Charlestown where I used to work and would often film in my building. And I was always like, I want to run into him and say hi to him, and be in his video or something, because it was always a lot of fun to kind of see the places I'd recognize. But he always talks about Android phones, so that was always good. So that was last time. Let's talk about what we've got coming up in this episode. In our first segment, I wanted to talk about this story from Boing Boing, the blog. Cory Doctorow was writing about this, that there was this teenager from Florida had an app in the App Store, the Apple App Store for iPhones and iOS, called the Bad Hombre. And it's an anti-Trump game. I mean, it's pretty clearly an anti-Trump game. And it had, there was, I'm pretty sure that Apple had no problem with that point of view in the game. That was, they were okay with that, and there are there were anti-Clinton games and before and that sort of thing. So it's not about Trump per se, but they removed the app because, well, as Cory Doctorow says, because they can't tell the difference between apps that criticize racism and racist apps. And I think that's a little bit of an oversimplification, because what it boils down to is because the game included the swastika, obviously the Nazi symbol, or the symbol adopted by the Nazis. It's actually much older than the Nazis historically, but the symbol adopted by the Nazis, and which has come to represent everything hateful about them and those who extol their point of view, including white supremacist racists in America today. So it's a loaded symbol, and so they removed it from the App Store. And 2 days after the app won a big award, so it must have gotten noticed when that happened. And so it was removed from both Apple's App Store and the Google Play Store, although Google later reversed their decision. And they said it was because of the use of the swastika in the game. And this has become a bit of a point of contention where in the past, these tech companies, in efforts to police offensive content, have sometimes failed to distinguish the context in which things appear. So first, let's just kind of talk about this. Did you both get a chance to check this story out? And do you have any opinion about what we've talked about this so far? Did Apple do the right thing? Did Google do the right thing in restoring it after they took it down? What do you think about this idea of we shouldn't have this type of app in the store? What do you think?
Well, I guess to me, I would prefer to see a method where the app was still in the store, but labeled as possibly racist or possibly offensive or some type of a rating as opposed to censorship.
Yeah.
And, pornography, yeah, that's something different. But I think the other things is it could say opinions only or non-factual or something that would alert somebody who is on the lookout for that to say, this isn't what I want.
Yeah. But I agree. You'll run into the same issue though, is what's deemed to be labeled like that. You see this on Facebook all the time where there's a video that's blanked out with the, this content might be inappropriate or offensive.
Right.
And yet, who's making that determination and who's deciding that?
Right. But I can still say, well, let me look at it anyway.
Right.
The other way, I can't.
Yeah.
I have no choice. So I would prefer to be a rating system, if you will, or a comment or whatever, and let me decide whether I want to go ahead.
Let me make the decision, and to provide a system by which a parent could make a blanket decision on behalf of a minor. Yeah,
exactly.
That's an interesting aspect. Oh, there are other aspects to this, which is like in the specific case of the swastika, because Apple does business in Germany, that is the swastika is banned legally. They cannot, if they want to do business in Germany, they cannot sell anything with it in it. Amazon has the same issues, and they have to get around it sometimes. Like there are documentaries and movies, that sort of thing. There are historical books and textbooks and stuff where it doesn't apply. But I think what makes this case different is it's not being used in a historical context. It's not being used as criticism particularly. It's being used as part of a game, even though the game is critical of that point of view. I think part of it is because it's part of a game. Now, a few years ago, when the whole when we had this massive nationwide flap over the Confederate flag, we had this a wave of things being removed from app stores. Apple basically purged the Confederate flag from any app that had the Confederate flag, including this Civil War game that was very popular among history buffs. It was what was the name of the game? I forget what the name of the game was. I have it here. But it wasn't extolling the viewpoint of the Confederacy or what it stood for, but it just said historically this side was the Confederacy, and we have we role play battles in the game, and so this side has the American flag and this side has the Confederate flag, and that represents them. And they said, nope, you can't have it. And they kicked it out of the store. And it's like, part of it, I think, is the problem of there's context for things, and we're not being allowed to say that the context matters. Correct? I mean, am I off base on that?
No, I think you're correct that's what's happening. It's kind of like the thing where on Facebook, somebody can't tell when something is satire. And so all of a sudden people get all up in arms. It was satire, folks. It was not a factual story. And I think it's just part of the polarization of the country and that instant call to objection that we're seeing. Protest, so to speak.
Right. One of the things that this raises for me, though, is who determines what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. And that goes part of what you said, Pat. Like if you just say, look, some people think this is offensive and label it as such, then the individual determines whether it is or not.
And I would also like to say that when it's labeled as maybe offensive, I'd like to know what category it's offensive in.
Right. this may be offensive to people.
If this is violence, I want to know that. If it's homosexuality or something that somebody is objecting to, or sexuality, it's a different thing than just saying, "Oh, this is offensive."
Right. Some people may find this offensive because it expresses a pro-life point of view, and
that's right.
That sort of thing. Now, I think the difficulty that we've encountered is there are many people out there. It's not enough that something be labeled and they can thus avert their eyes, but the fact that it exists is offensive. The fact that it's even there, that it shouldn't even be given a place that some people could choose it.
I guess I'm thinking of 1984, in which they rewrote history and purged stuff because it offended somebody or some political area decided it wasn't correct. And I think education is something that we need to aim for, is to say, yes, there are differing viewpoints, and yes, there are different value systems that people have, but I don't think these should be used to eliminate things like from games or whatever. I think they just should be used to recommend.
It's also taking away the responsibility of the individual. If someone else is deciding for me what's offensive and all of these things, and then just filtering down what I'm able to see and do and receive, then I am not making any personal choice in that
Correct.
whatsoever. And I think that's one of the dangers of all of this sort of things is of this whole technology. We talked about this even with like the Netflix and the recommended videos. Like, where's my choice in all of this, or is this just being fed to me? And we have to learn how to discern between what's good and bad. Now, there are certain objective wrongs that should never, see the light of day, pornography and those sorts of things. Yeah. But, in terms of like a historical context, you should be able to see the objective truth about what happened and not be restricted in that. And then the responsibility falls on parents and the individuals who are viewing this content to research it and to not have to abide by what someone else determines is morally correct or morally incorrect for me.
That's a good point. One of the things that concerns me in all this is what happens when Christian point of view, our beliefs that we share here, become unacceptable, become something that people want banned, that we can't have Christian prayer apps or even a pro-life app in the App Store. And this is one of the concerns with a walled garden like Apple's App Store versus the Google way, which is to, with Google, you can use the Google Play Store to load, apps, but you can also sideload them, from third-party stores or, direct download, where you can't really do that on an iPhone easily. I mean, of course, there's ways to do it, but in general, the general population can't. And that's one of the things that concerns me is when there is a gatekeeper, I recognize the value of Apple's ability to keep bad stuff off my phone. I like that, viruses and malware and that sort of stuff. But it worries me that it gives them maybe too much power over what I can put on my phone. What do you how should we approach this? I mean, obviously it's not happening yet. And maybe we shouldn't, enough troubles for tomorrow, maybe not, reap troubles from tomorrow, today. But I mean, what do you think? What should our approach to this sort of thing be? Should iPhone users be concerned, perhaps?
I think we should always be vigilant and aware, concerned to a degree. We are paying into this ecosystem, so we should be aware of what we're paying into. And if those in charge of the Apple Store are obviously pursuing an agenda that's contrary to my beliefs, then I think we have a moral obligation to counter that and to, resist that, especially if they're going to promote, particularly anti-Catholic things. So, absolutely, I think we have to be vigilant and aware at all times, and pay attention to what's happening around us, because they are the ones in charge and we're allowing them to be in charge.
It also would be a good idea, I think, to look for ways that we can make our viewpoints and our preferences known in a acceptable fashion. Not words, not a irritant to the system, but I don't know the word to use, but to make proactive suggestions to say, you have a large percentage of your population that holds these things to be that they should be available. And I don't know how we would go about doing that, to provide a spokesperson, or to provide some type of a way of letting our views be known in a way that is not just turned down.
That's a really good point. I would love to see something like the communications committee of the U.S. Bishops Conference, like where Bishop Christopher Coyne of Burlington, Vermont, is the chair of that, as far as I know, if he still is. I would love to see them sit down with these big tech companies and have regular conversations with them about the concerns that Catholics bring, but also the ways we hope that we could use these things, these tools, in a good manner, and that benefits everyone, the most people. I know that Pope Francis has met with Mark Zuckerberg. He's met with the guys from Twitter. I think he's met with Tim Cook. I'm not certain of that one, but my recollection is he might have. But in any case, I would love to see them sit down. Have the representatives from the Catholic Church sit down on a regular basis with people from the tech industry and talk about these things. Like you said, not in an irritant way, but in a way that is productive and a give and take and a back and forth that helps everyone concerned. I would love to see that. And that might allay some concerns.
Well, for instance, Bishop Barron, I know, made a trip to Google's complex and talked with them and had a good dialogue, I think. And even the things that we were talking about on Facebook or on Motion Pictures, if you say, we have a panel, somebody from the Jewish community, somebody from the Catholic community, somebody from the atheist community, if you want to go that far, or from the Muslim community. And this is a panel that when something like this comes up, it can be discussed in a panel situation and come up with a consensus, rather than saying, oh, there's this employee at Facebook that's going to use the guillotine on this particular topic.
That's interesting. Yeah. That I like the idea that where we need to have an open process of conversation and dialogue about these things, and not just politicians on Capitol Hill saying to, say, Facebook or Apple, you need to police offensive content or we're going to pass regulation on you, and leaving it up to them to figure out what it is supposed to say. I like to see this to be a community conversation about what sorts of things are done. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get everything that we want, but I'd like to have that opportunity to have open dialogue. I did really enjoy when Bishop Barron went up to Google, and you can actually listen to that and watch that talk on YouTube. It was really good, where he talked about these sorts of things. He'd be an excellent ambassador for us.
Maybe we should put the bug in his ear.
Yeah. And Bishop Coyne. I mean, he's an excellent tech-savvy bishop. I'd love to see him be involved in this as well. It would be really good. Excellent. And the SQPN audience might know him. He was present at some of our Catholic New Media conferences in the past. Bishop Coyne was. He's a friend of SQPN. So it would be good. All right. So let's, as always, this is an open conversation. We'll probably be coming back to this topic in the future, but and if listeners have anything they want to share, some feedback on this, we'd love to get it from them, and we'll give you the contact information at the end of the podcast. But let's talk about our second segment. One of the things that's come up, and I think it was actually a listener who asked about VPNs. I keep hearing about VPNs, and security is a big thing we talk about, and VPN in the context of security. And so they want to know, like, what's a VPN and why should I use one? And so I thought it would be good to have a conversation now. Now, Pat, you know about VPNs. You've helped clients with those and that sort of thing, right?
Yes, and in fact, that was one of my pick of the weeks when I'm on my first, I think, first or second time here. And yes, I have clients who come to me and say, I travel. I'm going to be going to hotels. How do I protect myself? I know I'm not supposed to be using open Wi-Fi.
Right.
So a VPN is a one-click usually option once it's installed to say, turn it on and I'm encrypted, turn it off and I'm back to being open on my own home network.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I've helped several different brands of VPNs be installed. I have my own favorites, but there's a lot of good ones out there and some good reviews of them out there as well.
So let's define some terms for folks then. So a VPN is an acronym for Virtual Private Network. And what it means is when you turn this on, you are private between your device, computer or phone or tablet, and some part of the internet, a server out there on the internet, a server that you presumably trust. We'll get into that what that exactly means in a second. But there's a secure connection. All the traffic between you and that server is encrypted, which means that no one in between can just pull a packet out of the stream with a packet sniffer and look at it. That's an important thing I think people don't necessarily understand is unless you are specifically on an encrypted connection, your data is viewable by everyone on the internet in between you and the server you're communicating with, including your email. Don't ever send social security numbers or other important data in an email. It's like writing it on a postcard and throwing it in a mailbox, or putting it on a billboard downtown. I mean, it's not secure. So what happens is you create the secure connection between you and the VPN server, and then that server, which can be located anywhere in the world, then sends your data out anonymized out from there. So that's anonymous connection to another website or something like that, or a message server or something, and then you have this connection there. Now, obviously, you in that data stream, you put passwords and usernames, and you can sign into websites and that sort of thing. But what it does is it protects you on that first part of the journey of the internet from your device out to a server. Now, one of the key things is you got to trust the VPN. It's important to only use a VPN that has a good reputation. Don't just pick one from the App Store, especially the ones that are marked free, because in fact they may not actually be secure. They may be stealing your data and your information. So always be sure that you're using a VPN with a good reputation. So Pat, why would someone want to? Very specifically, in what situations would someone use a VPN?
Okay, so I go to a coffee shop or I go to my car dealer and I'm sitting there and I want to check my email or I want to check my financial institution to see whether a check is cleared yet or not, or I want to do some searching on the internet to look for some information. If I don't have a VPN, then as you say, anybody in that same network, in that same coffee shop, that same car dealer could be malicious and be gathering it all and see everything I've done.
And this really applies
with some exceptions.
This really applies to Wi-Fi more so than the mobile cell connection, the mobile towers.
That's
right?
True, because it's not impossible to eavesdrop on a cellular connection. It is very difficult and is more expensive for somebody to do so. It could be done.
Yeah.
And the same thing, your home network, you've got a router, you've got a password on that router. By its very nature, it's already encrypted going from you to the rest of the internet. I mean, it's not encrypted as such, but I mean, nobody could get into your Wi-Fi because it's got a password. But once it gets out on the internet, that piece of mail gets out, it's still visible to anybody in the middle.
Yeah.
Whereas a VPN, it's tunneling it. Like you've got a big lake and everybody can see everything in the lake, but you've got this tunnel in the middle that nobody can see into.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing is keeping your connection safe when you're at a hotspot or a hotel or any place like that you don't know who else is on that network.
Yeah. If you're at an airport terminal and you see on your Wi-Fi list of available Wi-Fi hotspots an open Wi-Fi network that says free Wi-Fi in all caps, don't. That is probably a trick designed to let someone get into your data and sometimes even get back into your computer.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're going to use any Wi-Fi outside the home, you know, whether it's your laptop or your phone or your tablet, use a VPN. That's
now
just...
some people think, well, I'm just going to go look at Amazon and do some searching, so I don't need to have a VPN connected. But what they don't realize is in the background, their phone or their tablet is going and getting mail for them, or it's going and getting different types of information. They're not even aware that all of that is going across that same signal. They just think they're looking at Amazon, and they don't care who sees.
Right.
So that's a big point that a lot of my clients don't understand. There's another reason. Most of the time, people really don't need it on their own home network. But there are a couple of exceptions, like if you have some things that are location-based, that you want to be able to do something, but you are in a location that doesn't allow for that. A VPN can let you, in a sense, pretend to be someplace else. And so I have had people that wanted to be able to access something while they were traveling, but they're not in their own country of origin, so they can't get to it.
Like
But
Netflix,
if they say,
for example. You
Yeah,
can't
I
get
was
into your
trying-
Netflix
right.
subscription from Europe. It says, well, you're not in the U.S., you can't use U.S. Netflix.
Well, the example was that we were in Canada, and I said, I want to use my Netflix. It says, oh, you can't do that. You're in Canada. So I pulled up my VPN and said, I'm in Detroit. And so I was able to watch my movies, and that was a legal use for me of
Yes.
it. Now, there are some people that may want to use it for other things to get around limitations. That's something between them and their conscience.
BBC iPlayer.
Yeah. But at any rate, that's one use. Now, several months ago, there was a real uproar about the fact that cable companies used to say, we're not going to sell any bit of your data.
Yeah.
And then they came along and the law was somehow changed to say they could sell it. And most of them came back and said, we won't. But during that time, VPNs became all of a sudden very popular.
Especially,
because
including on your home network.
Right.
Yeah.
And because if you feel like your provider is going to be selling your information, you might want to be a tunnel through them. So all they know is that you've just got a connection somewhere out there that they can't see what you're doing and can't sell, hey, this person in Texas is going to look for snowmobiles or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why you might want to use it in your own home.
Sounds to me like, so I'm coming from a perspective, I haven't ever really looked into VPNs. So what, I guess I have a couple questions. That location-based idea, I imagine would also play a role in potentially, like, if you're booking airline tickets or if you're, doing something like that often, the cookies on your computer and location-based, they might change the price of an airline ticket that's showing up on your webpage.
Well, it wouldn't.
I hadn't heard of that, but
it wouldn't affect the cookies. Yeah. Yeah, the cookies themselves would still transmit back and forth, but the location information wouldn't necessarily. Now, if you were in private browser mode on your browser and using a VPN to connect to an airline or any e-commerce site that does this, so what Father's referring to is sometimes various e-commerce sites like airlines and even Amazon, they'll show different prices to different people depending on what they know about you. I think it's kind of shady too, but it's apparently legal. And so if you want to say, okay, I want you to just think I'm some vanilla person that you don't know anything about, what do you say the price is at this point? Then a VPN and private browsing mode would probably be the thing to do in that case. That would probably get you a good a good idea of what it would be like for just a plain vanilla Joe on that. So yeah, and for a priest, because priests live in rectories that they're moving into, it's not their own home. It's it's oftentimes the Wi-Fi infrastructure is under someone else's authority. I'm not saying that you need to be suspicious of the other people, but it's just even for your own peace of mind that you don't know, is there an IT company that's maintaining the Wi-Fi at this place? Is there? I think because priests are somewhat transient, and it's not your own place necessarily. It could be a useful thing for your peace of mind.
Well, and there, to be completely honest with you, I do not know how many people have the Wi-Fi password for here at the cathedral.
Oh yes, that's a big one.
Because there are multiple, of course, people who come in. They do a presentation in our parish hall. They need to get onto YouTube, so we give them the Wi-Fi password, and we do change it every now and again and try to keep that limited, but still, I couldn't give you a list of who all has access to it.
It's essentially public Wi-Fi.
Yeah, more or less. We do have a separate Wi-Fi that is like just for the rectory. And so like, I know that password and only a handful of us know that, but still I could, inadvertently give that out or think that's the strongest connection. And, yeah, I don't know who all is on this network.
Yeah. So how would you go about picking one, a Wi-Fi, a VPN provider? There's some things to keep in mind. When you use a VPN, you are sacrificing a tiny bit of speed. Not a lot necessarily, but there is...
Depends upon the VPN.
Yeah, some of them are better than others. And one of the things I've encountered with the one I'm using, and that's why I'm kind of thinking of switching, is my iOS devices sometimes have trouble connecting, even when... So the one I use, and I'll tell you about it in a second, they have an automatic on VPN. Like when they detect that I'm on a untrusted network, it turns on automatically, which is actually a nice feature. It's a really nice idea. I don't have to remember to do it. It just does it. But I find that sometimes I have trouble connecting, even when I'm not using the VPN, and I have this sneaking suspicion that it's related to it. And part of that, it's kind of complicated, but do you ever see when you log on to a Wi-Fi, like at a hotel, it pops up a page and asks you to either sign in or agree to their terms of service? The thing is when you have a VPN, sometimes the connection happens and then the server wants to send you that page, but then the VPN goes up. And now you're another connection, and that page doesn't come through, and now you're in this limbo without being connected. You've not agreed to the terms of service or entered your username and password, but you can't see it because you're a different, a different IP address, basically.
That's why I prefer on the VPN I'm using, I don't do it automatic. Yeah. I just say, I turn it on after I've made my connection.
Right.
Because I used to have a lot of trouble with going into Starbucks, for instance, because it would want to bring up the page. And even without the VPN, I had a trouble because it was thinking I needed to be a secure site. And so I had to go through some rigmarole of saying, no, let me go to a site that's not secure. And then their launch page would come up. Yep. So, yeah, I just say I connect when I'm ready.
One of the things a piece of advice I've heard from a Mac podcast called Mac Geek Gab, they mentioned that sometimes it's related to SSL encryption, which is different from VPN encryption. Most sites use, it's called Secure Socket Layer. Most sites are using SSL nowadays, and there's a similar issue that happens with connecting to public Wi-Fi. So they recommend that there's this website called neverssl.com, which, and as the name says, it's just a page on a server that will never have Secure Socket Layer installed, and it's just designed to get you online, just to connect to a server.
That's exactly what was happening at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And so I would use NeverSSL, make my connection, then turn on my VPN.
No, yes. And so that's so if you ever encounter that, that's one way to fix it. Another thing to keep in mind is we talked about sketchy VPNs. One of the things to do is to check the policies. You want to make sure that they're a VPN provider that doesn't keep logs. it does no good if no one can see your data except they're keeping a copy of it. Like I mean, you're not James Bond. I know nobody listening to this is James Bond. You're not worrying about the Russians. I think it's back 30 years. The Russians, paying attention to your web traffic. But the fact is the more data that's out there being recorded, the less secure you are for this type of thing. And so you want to check their policies. What are their policies? What kind of data do they keep? How do they track you? Do they track you at all? Frankly, if you're a journalist in a country that oppresses its people and there's not freedom, it's much more important for them. And VPNs are a lifeline for them. It's literally life or death. And this sort of getting rid of data and not keeping logs is even more important for them. But I think it's useful for us. So, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that I usually tell my folks is that go to a website that does really good reviews, like Tom's Hardware, or there's several others that I trust too. But go to there, look at the list of VPNs, read about them, and decide how much you want to pay versus how much slowdown you get or that type of thing. And Tom's Hardware always does really good objective reviews.
Yeah, we'll put a link to their latest VPN review in the show notes at sqpn.com/technology. So let's talk about a couple of different ones that we know of. The one I've been using for several years is encrypt.me. They used to be called getcloak.com, but now they changed to encrypt.me. And they've been okay. They're relatively low cost. It's like $10 a month for unlimited amount of data. They have a lower cost one for a limited amount, like I think 5 gigs. And that's if you think you're only going to use it occasionally, going out to a coffee shop once in a while or that sort of thing. I'm out and about enough that I felt like the unlimited was a better deal for me, and plus I use it a lot more than like even when I'm in places where I think it's secure but I'm not sure, I still use it. And so I have the $10 a month. I've been not as happy with it. I've had some of these issues that I've mentioned where it seems it gets this cycling connection where it's connected, not connected, not connected, not connected. And then my iPad has been really weird about getting online, and I can't say for sure that it's the VPN, but it might be the VPN. So I'm thinking of trying a different one. But Pat, you had one that you recommended as a pick of the week a while ago.
Yes, ExpressVPN.
Yep.
I have used it for a year or so now. It's $99 a year, 3 devices. I don't remember there being a cap on the amount of data. And the way I chose it was I went out and looked at about 6 or 7 VPNs and tried them serially or on different machines. And ExpressVPN gets a connection initially more often than the others did. I tried Nord and several other ones, and they just were not as many servers that I could connect with immediately. It was like I had to go down a list and manually try ones until I got a good connection. Whereas ExpressVPN, it's very seldom I don't get a good connection. The other thing is that some of the other VPNs, it was a drop of 50% speed.
Wow.
And that was typical of what I was seeing, a year and a half ago. Whereas ExpressVPN, it's not 100%, but it's like 80% or something like that. It's pretty fast. The other thing is they have servers in a lot of countries, and a lot more servers than some of the other ones I was looking at. Now, I know there's more that have come up, and Tom's Hardware was mentioning, besides Nord, they were also mentioning several others that they liked. And I would say go through them and take a look. But I've really liked ExpressVPN. As I say, it's $100 a year. But sometimes when you're signing up, you might be getting a special that might make it less than that.
What impresses me is how many devices it works on, like everything you can think of, including smart TVs, gaming consoles. They have apps
your
for
router,
and even like right at the router, at the where it comes into your home. I mean, I think that's really interesting. But you're going to say something?
I was actually just looking at the prices too, because this is quite a appropriate conversation that I'm hearing from you guys, because I'm going to Italy in June.
Ooh,
so
yes.
Nice.
So this is very informative for me. But I was just looking up Express VPN, and the introductory rate is $99 for 15 months.
Right. So that's 3 months free.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can also do monthly. Now it's quite a bit more, but if you were just wanting to getting it just for a trip, you could do something like that.
Yep.
And try
it's
it out.
$13 for a single month.
Right.
Interesting. Now, another one that I've heard a lot about is TunnelBear. They're less expensive. They're $60 a year, but they're listed a little low. They don't work on as many different devices. And I was looking at Tom's Hardware, how they list them. They give them a 4 out of 5, which is a pretty good rating. By comparison, ExpressVPN is 4.5, NordVPN is 4 to 5. So that's a pretty good rating. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and they have some ancillary services that go along with it, which seems interesting. So that's another one that I'm not necessarily recommending, but just I'm saying check it out. But I think that Tom's Hardware link is probably the place to go, where you can get a look at all of the pros and cons of each one. That's a really good link that's there.
I also wanted to mention that this particular review did rate Windscribe, which is a free one, and they gave it a pretty high rating, even if it was free. They said, they had checked out the security, and it seemed to be on the up and up more than some of the others did. So that would be something, if you just couldn't afford a VPN, that's the one I would look at to try. But if you can afford one, I would say get one of the ones that's a paid one, because you're not the product.
Yeah. With free, it always worries me that.
Yeah, me too. But that I did notice that they rated that one right along with the other ones. You know, as far as it got a 4, just like TunnelBear did. And
even if you go with Windscribe's paid plan, it's $50 a year, which is still
it's still less,
pretty cheap for that. So that's pretty interesting. So, I mean, you get a VPN, even if you've got one sort of in your back pocket for when you think you might travel or when you might need it. I mean, these days it's probably one of those things that you think of as a necessary expense for being secure, just when you're out there. And if you get one that lets you have multiple devices, then you can spread the cost out, among your family, or all your devices, and that makes a lot of sense. And
now with the ExpressVPN, it's 3 devices of concurrent use. So you could have it installed on 4 or 5 devices, just only 3 of them could be active at one time.
That's a good point. Excellent. Because I've got my laptop, my phone, my iPad, my iMac, and then the rest of my family. But that makes sense. Excellent. Anything else to say about VPNs?
No, but you mentioned something just a minute ago about being incognito and protecting yourself that way. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I have some quibble on, is that incognito doesn't mean you're secure.
Right.
It just means that it's hiding you from people that would come on your computer later and look to see where you've been. It doesn't hide you from the websites that you're going to.
Right.
They still know who you are.
Yes.
But I just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of it's more of a does it still take cookies? Did I get that wrong?
Well, I think that it disables like third-party cookies and stuff, but I think mainly it's so that your computer doesn't know you've been to that website before.
Okay.
So in some ways, as I say, if somebody's coming along and looking, they won't see that you've been to a site, but it doesn't keep the sites out there from saying, oh, well, here's the computer that came. They're on Windows or they're on a Mac and they're from Austin. Right. They can still see that. Right. And your provider can still see that.
Right. Yes. That's a good point. That we should be clear on that. That they still get lots of data about your computer, but they don't necessarily know who you are per se. That's a good point.
Okay.
Excellent. So let's move on to our picks of the week. Now one of my favorite parts of our show, because it's always fun to find about new things. Father Andrew, I think you have something that you mentioned before. So what's your pick of the week?
Yeah, so my pick of the week is the new Oculus Quest. So I did pre-order one. They're not cheap. Oh, they're not cheap. I think it's $400 for the cheaper version and $500 for the more internal memory version. And I was kind of nervous, but the lure of the new Star Wars Vader Immortal game just had me hooked, so I had to try it out. And I have to say that I was completely blown away by how impressive the technology is.
Oh, wow.
I still think AR is kind of the future because of the social aspect of it, but the VR of the Oculus Quest was fantastic. It's completely self-contained. There's no external wires, and I found it incredibly easy to use. And I mean, really, it puts you in a virtual. I felt like a holodeck from Star Trek. Like,
wow.
I literally felt in this space. You can see virtual hands in front of you, and they respond to the controls. So you can pick up things, you can throw things, you can point, you can, use your hands as if you were physically doing something. And even the immersiveness of the game Vader Immortal, which is pretty much the only thing that I've been able to do, has been just
what more do you
phenomenal.
Want to do?
What was that?
What more do you want to do? It's worth every penny just to play Vader Immortal.
Well, that's your vacation for the year.
Exactly.
It was I found it crazy because even within the game, the characters track where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So as like Vader is coming at me with this device that he wants me to unlock, his face will track where I physically am located at. And so with the Oculus Quest, you map out a space, a physical space, and the Oculus Quest knows exactly what that space is and will put up warnings when you walk too far towards one of the barriers.
Oh, okay.
So you know not to run into the wall or whatever.
That's good.
And yeah, and so it was kind of funny. I actually went down to the basement of our parish hall and mapped out about a 20-foot by 15-foot area and just kind of had fun with it. It was, I was, like I said, blown away by how immersive the VR technology was. I was not expecting it to be that immersive. I kind of expected just the only experience that I had before was at a museum where I had to sit in a chair and I had this VR contraption on. And so I was literally just moving my chair back and forth and looking around. And there was no physical movement. It was all, you look at this particular area of the screen this particular area for about 5 seconds, and then you'll walk that way.
Okay.
But with the Oculus Quest, you can walk around, and it moves your person.
Okay.
So yeah, I found it incredibly immersive and a heck of a lot of fun for sure.
Wow, that's cool.
Can't wait to see how that works in real life. That's pretty amazing.
We'll be up to your place to try it out.
That's right. Come on over.
Yeah.
I'll let you try it for sure.
Definitely. I'll take you up on that. Pat, what do you have for us this week?
Oh, mine is much cheaper. I went on a plane trip last week or 2 weeks ago and wanted to get something to help drown out the sound of the plane so that I could watch a movie or listen to an audiobook while I was on the trip. And I didn't want a big pair of headphones, and I didn't want Bluetooth because often they don't want you using any Bluetooth devices while you're taking off and landing. So I got some noise cancellation type earbuds that are wired, and basically that you charge them up just like you would Bluetooth or whatever, and you can turn on and off the noise cancellation. And I had tried something like this 3 or 4 years ago, and it was pretty bad. I had a vibration coming from the noise cancellation thing that was really irritating.
Yeah.
This was smooth. I mean, basically I could flip it on and off, and you could hear a huge difference in the background noise and cutting out the people's conversations around me and the noise of the airplane. I could very well listen to a movie and hear the dialogue perfectly with this. And I was really pleased. Now, these are fairly cheap. They were only $39 to $49, depending upon, what specials you were finding. And they are not Bluetooth, although they have Bluetooth variety. I wanted something that was wired. And so this really worked. And I was able to wear them for a couple of hours on the plane, and I didn't find them irritating.
And so, it looks like it even includes an airplane adapter for the special outlets.
Yes, it did. My airplane didn't have one, but yes, you could use it to charge it with.
Interesting.
But it's something like you plug it in for an hour, and it's good for 20 hours.
Oh, wow.
So, and it still functions even if you run out of battery. It still functions as a head earbuds.
Okay.
Just the noise cancellation isn't there.
Excellent. Wow, cool. I mean, I've always looked at the Bose Quiet Comforts and those, but those are like $350. Those are really expensive.
Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't go that route. I wanted something and they're small. They fit in a little tiny pouch.
Nice.
So anyway, that's just my pick of the week.
All right. So my pick is a browser extension called the FB Purity browser extension. FB stands for, well, they call it Fluffbuster, but it also stands for Facebook. And
of course,
it's a browser extension for pretty much most browsers: Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, maybe even more than that. I use it in the Brave browser that we've talked about before. And what it does is it lets you clean up Facebook. And what I mean by that is, okay, yeah, sure, it turns off the ads. That's fine. And you may or may not want ads on your Facebook. But it does other things, like it lets you turn off the stories feature, turn off sponsored posts, turns off, like every single kind of post you can imagine, game and app posts. It lets you, it gives you notifications when particular friends, when people unfriend you, or when they're deleted, when they delete their account. It lets you filter posts based on certain words. So, like during the 2016 election, there were certain names I put in there, or last year when we had some Supreme Court nastiness, I put a few names in there, and I didn't have to look at any of that. Things like Facebook tells you every time someone joins a group, or every time someone is tagged in a note, and people get tagged in notes all the time. It can be cluttering. Other things it does is it lets you disable autoplay on video, which
is nice.
Very nice. It lets you turn off any kind of video. You could hide all videos if you wanted, if videos bothered you. There's like something like 150 different options in this that you can play with and really customize your Facebook experience and remove a lot of the stuff that makes it a pain in the neck. And frankly, I wish there was a way they could do it on iOS or Android, if that's your flavor, because every time I use Facebook on my phone or on my iPad, I'm reminded of, this is what it's like with in the bad times. So it's a really nice thing. So I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's a nice, and it's up. They keep it updated, and you can also, once you've got all your settings set the way you want, you can export them. So just in case you ever move browsers or something happens to your browser, gets reset or anything like that, you can have those settings. You don't have to go through the rigmarole of setting them all up again. So it's FB Purity for fluff busting purity browser extension. So that's my pick of the week.
Cool.
So before we sign off, I do have a bit of feedback. An email from a listener, John Scrivo, said, I'm really enjoying the Secrets of Technology show and how you and the panelists can relate it to people who aren't as tech savvy. He says, I use LastPass with Google Authenticator. I can use it with the Chrome plugin on my school computer, which is really helpful. For the pick of the week, you should mention mechanical keyboards. I've talked about keyboards. He says, I saw it on your blog and I had no idea that these existed. I'm not a gamer and really just went with whatever keyboard I had. I bought one as a birthday gift to myself to use at work, where I do quite a bit of typing, and it's amazing how much better I can type. I went with Cherry Blue switches since I was using it for typing only, and the noise wasn't an issue. Thanks again for all your hard work on the podcast. Fun and informative, and really makes the start and end of my workday so much better. Thank you, John. So, mechanical keyboards. This is the old, if you're of any age, you know of the old keyboards that computers used to have, clackety keyboards. They make all that noise that wonderful noise when you type. And I've got a couple of them on my desk. But here's one that's not connected to anything, so I can clack it. But it's like, like, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's it's pretty clackety. Now, obviously, I have to be careful because with podcasting, that would get annoying if I'm clackety during shows. So I've tried several of them. I've used several. A reason I haven't picked one yet is because I haven't found one that I really feel solidly I can recommend. I mean, I like them, but the first one I had failed. The one I've got now, these have been ones I've gotten for review. The one I'm using now is pretty good, except it has this weird double typing issue where it double types letters. And I've been trying to, I've got a piece of Mac software that I've downloaded off of GitHub that tries to fix that. It's actually intended for the MacBook Butterfly keyboard problems, but it's a similar problem, so it's kind of helping me a little bit. The other keyboard that I was just held up next to the microphone that's not connected is not a full-size keyboard. I love having my numeric keypad, and I really like having a full-size keyboard. So I'm still looking. If you have one you can recommend. I haven't tried the DOS keyboard yet, which is apparently a wonderful keyboard, but very expensive, but still a very nice keyboard. So that's the reason I haven't recommended one yet. But I like that feel. It's a solid mechanical feel of when you're typing. I type a lot. I do a lot of typing. And as you get into this, John mentioned he uses Cherry Blue switches. When you get into mechanical keyboards, you find out that there is a myriad of choices of switches. Cherry in a color switch, and they have different feel, different sound. You can dampen them using O-rings. It's a rat hole. It's down the rabbit hole into another world of mechanical keyboards.
A whole different career.
Yeah, exactly. So I will eventually perhaps have a pick of the week, which is the keyboard that I say this is the one, but I'm not quite there yet. But so thank you, John, for your email. So that's it from us. Before we go, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including this week, Teresa N., Samuel C., Ian S., Nick W., and Jimmy C. Not Jimmy Carter, although it would be nice to have him as a patron. I'd welcome the president in supporting us. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And so, what do you think of our discussion of both how stores police offensive content, the tech companies do, and our discussion of VPNs? Let us know by visiting sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. And leave us some feedback there or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And you'll find the relevant links from our discussion on our show notes at sqpn.com. If you could, folks, please write a review in iTunes or the Apple Podcast app or one of the podcast directories and share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our audience and grow this community of listeners. When you write a review, it kind of gooses the algorithm and says, oh, people are interested in this. Maybe we should show this to more people. Hey, this is what's hot. This is what's new. And so it really is really helpful. It's not just you stroke my ego and make me feel good because you say nice things, although that is a benefit. But it also helps with the growing the show and making sure that we're reaching lots of folks. And we really do appreciate all your efforts and all the ways that you help support what we do here. Until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Absolutely. It's been fun.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.